Easter Sunday. Had a good day last week. Some folks had asked, was it good to have two services? Did we need to have two services? I don't know if we needed to for space, but I know that a lot of people needed us to. We had about 80 people in the first service, and I think about 230 in the second service, I think is about right. And so pastorally speaking, that means we had about 650 in church last week. So that was good to see. But that's why we had two services, just to provide an opportunity for everybody who wanted to be a part of those services. And so it was a good week. And then of course you have the week after Easter is always tough. You kind of got that lull. I don't know what it is. I don't know if a lot of people think, well, I did my spiritual thing last week. I can take this week off. I'm not really sure what it is, but I'm glad you made it back. On the way here today, I looked up. I saw a sign, kind of made me laugh. A church sign. It said, "Pretend today is Easter Sunday and come back to church with us this week too." And I don't know if that worked. I don't know if that really attracts people to their church, but I kind of thought it was funny. But the sign did end by saying, "Jesus is still alive." And that's really all the reason we need to be here today. That's why we have church every single Sunday. Not just about Easter Sunday, although that is the high holy day when we think about it. But really every Sunday, Easter Sunday, because Jesus is still alive and gives us a reason to be here. So I appreciate you being here in order to celebrate that with us. As we think about the Easter story and all that led up to it, we talked about a good bit about all the events that led up to that Resurrection Sunday. And one of the things that we talked about the betrayal of Jesus there in the Garden of Gethsemane. One of the things we did not mention, though, as we were talking about that in here, was in the book of Matthew, when Matthew was talking about what took place, Matthew chapter 26, and when he's talking about how that unfolded that night, Jesus made an interesting statement. He said when Peter took out the sword and he chopped the guy's ear off, Jesus said, "Man, put that thing away." He said, "Don't you realize that I could call down 12 legions of angels and they would defend me? They could take care of this puny little army, just one of them, but I could call down 12 legions of angels." Now, a legion would have been about 6,000 troops. 6,000. So he's, it's not a literal number, 7,200, not the literal number, but what he's saying is I can call down however many I wanted, however many were necessary, and it would have taken care of any issue that I had, and my problems would be solved. Peter, I don't really need you and your meager little effort to take care of me. I can handle this. So my question is, when you think about what was coming his way, when you think about what was going to be happening the next day, and just all that would be unfolded, the logical question is, so why did it? Why not? How could he not have done that? When you think about the innocence that he was, and you think about the corrupted individuals who were leading to this point, and all that was going on around him, and really, if you think about what the Bible says, that he despised. Think about the word now, despise. You ever despised something, okay, other than broccoli? I mean, have you ever really just despised something? The Bible says that he despised the shame of the cross. When you consider everything, if he could have done that, then why didn't he? What is it that held his hand back? And I believe the word would be, I guess maybe it's a dual word, a compound word, however you want to say, a hyphenated word, would be self-control. That he exhibited an enormous amount of self-control to not do that which would have been normal, which would have been understandable for anyone else to do. I want us to think about this idea of self-control this morning as I guess the title of today's message would be Take Control. We live in an era today, we live in a society, and the norm, and it has been for quite some time, it's not like this is a new thought, but the normal motto for the culture is, if it feels good, do it. I mean, if you want it bad enough, and if it feels good, if it's pleasurable, if it's something that you think is natural, if it's something that you like, go for it. church, I'm not just talking about Emmanuel Baptist Church, I'm not just talking about the churches of our culture, what we see in the community oftentimes finds itself seeping into the church. That's why we have to be extra diligent, extra mindful of these things. But I think back, especially when it comes to the issue of self-control, I think about the church at Corinth. Of course, if you want a negative example of just about anything going on in the church, read the book of 1 Corinthians, man. And Corinth had it all. And they really exhibited very little self-restraint or self-control. It happened in the area of sexuality. You can read about that. Going all the way up to their practice of the Lord's Supper. There was just no restraint whatsoever. I mean, it was just like whatever came to mind, whatever came to passion, hey, let's just indulge in it. Let's just go do that. And that's what they did. And hence, Paul writes 1 Corinthians and says, man, you got to calm down. You people are messed up. And it's really a very scathing letter. It's not a sweet letter at all. You read it as a sweet letter, you ain't read it right. But he goes and he addresses all of these things that they're facing. And one of the things that he's going to talk about is being self-controlled in all things. So I want us to think about that, because if you think about Galatians chapter 5, it's there in your outline that you received in your bulletin when you came in. Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 and 23 talks about the fruits of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit, you think about what fruit is. It's that which is born naturally off of the tree. If you have a certain kind of a tree, this is naturally going to be what comes from that tree. And if we are connected to Christ, if we are true followers of Jesus, what is going to naturally follow are the fruits of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and last of all, self-control. This is going to come naturally. Now, that doesn't mean just because it is a fruit of the Spirit, just because it is something that should be natural to us as believers, as followers of Jesus, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily easy. Just like some of you, if I were to give you a tree or a bush to plant, man, you got to work at that. You know, some people say, well, I got a black thumb. You know, some people got a green thumb, some people got a black thumb. It touches and it just withers right there in front of them. Just because this might be a natural process doesn't mean that it's an easy one. And so it's something that we need to take a look at. And I want us to talk briefly this morning, and yes, I will try to be brief this morning, about self-control. And I want to encourage you to take control. Now, you can turn your Bibles. 1 Corinthians chapter 9. You see that there in your outline. By the way, I hope you have your outline. That's what came in your bulletin. Take that out. Open up your Bible, 1 Corinthians chapter 9. Take out a pen, and let's get ready to write a few things down. Again, as always, if you don't like to write stuff down, if you don't learn that way, then don't waste your time doing it. Okay, this isn't for a grade. This is just for your help. So there are a few things that I want us to talk about when it comes to self-control. I want to talk to you about self-control manifested, managed, and motivated. And so here we go. First thing I want us to think about as we think about self-control is self-control manifested. In other words, how are we going to know, do I have self-control? Am I good at this thing called self-control? And I've got a list, and by the way, this is just my list. This is not a list that you're going to find in the Bible, so it is not definitive. It may or may not address something that you touch on. But I believe that these are some common areas of our life that we can look at. And when we look at and evaluate ourselves and how we handle these things, it might give us a good picture, a good snapshot, if you will, of whether or not we exhibit good self-control. So just a few areas that you might struggle with, and a few areas that, I struggle with it. That's why it's on here. Okay, this is why I know, because these are areas that are oftentimes very difficult. The first, I would say, would be, and these are going to be behind me, the first area would be the area of temper. Temper. Are you a short-tempered individual, or are you a patient individual? Do you have a temper? Listen, this isn't in your outline, but it should be. Write down, and you can look at it later on, Proverbs chapter 16 and in verse 32. Proverbs 16:32 says, "He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty. And he who rules his spirit, he who has self-control, he who rules his spirit, than he who captures a city." That might be a great conqueror who comes in and can take over a nation. But listen, the stronger individual is the one who can control his temper. How are you in the area of your temper? What about the second one would be taste. One of the great ways to decide if you have self-control is taste when it comes to the area of food. This morning, I don't know what to think of it. This morning, Carol Shute, one of the sweetest ladies I know, she brings into me a bag of Reese's. Now, you should know from last week, that was just not a nice thing to do. I mean, on the one hand, it's very nice. On the other hand, I'm thinking, okay, this is temptation right in the area what we're talking about this morning. Because these aren't just regular Reese's. These are the little mini Reese's, which means that they don't come wrapped. Which means all you have to do is open the bag and you can just start shoveling, man. You can just go to town. You don't have to take time and unroll all those things. So, what about food? Are you able to control yourself when it comes to the dinner table? Well, ask yourself that this afternoon. What about, number 3, what about the area of the tongue? The language that you use. What about when you hit your thumb with the hammer? What about when the car breaks down unexpectedly? What about when you don't hit the greatest golf shot on the planet? What comes out of your mouth at that point? Your tongue. What about, number 4, what about the area of time? How do you use your time? Do you use it wisely, or do you just find yourself wasting your time all the time? How you use your time is a great indicator of the kind of self-control that you have. Number 5, things. Stuff, possessions, money. How do you manage all of that? When you walk into a store, do you just automatically, are you an impulse buyer? Or are you able to walk in and say, you know what, I've got a certain amount, I can spend this amount, I can't go beyond this? Are you able to exhibit self-control when it comes to things? Oh, here's a fun one for some of you younger folks. Toddlers. Now, you older folks, you're laughing at your kids, but think back when you had your toddlers, okay? What about your kids? How do you respond to your kids? How do you treat your kids? Let me just tell you something. A lot of times when you see children who are out of control, they belong to parents who have no self-control. Toddlers. And then the last one that I'm going to give you this morning is going to be temptations. Temptations in all different areas. It could be, we mentioned a few that were found in the church at Corinth. It might be sexual, it might be power, it might be fame, or as younger folks would call it, popularity. How do you manage all of those things? Those are going to determine a lot about what kind of self-control you have. Now, if you are following along, if I counted right, which is not always the case, but if I counted right and you're following along right, there's going to be one more blank. That is a blank that I'm not going to give you. Because there may be something else in your life, there may be something that comes to your mind right now in your own life, an area that is really kind of difficult for you, and it shows self-control. It might show it in a good way, or it might show it in a not so good way. And I would just encourage you, just write that down for yourself. Again, this isn't for anybody else's eyes. This is just for you. This is just for you and your own personal growth. And by the way, it doesn't have to begin with a T, just because mine did. Whatever area it is that might, for you, reveal what kind of self-control you have, or not have, or don't have, then just write that out. Because let me remind you what the Bible says in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 12. Therefore, let him who thinks he stands take heed that he does not fall. You may not have a problem in any one of those other areas that I mentioned, but you have your own specific struggle. Don't kid yourself. Simply be honest with yourself. We do these things to take inventory of our own self-control. And sometimes we rank very well, and sometimes we rank not so well. We're just trying to take an honest look inside. Because if we want the fruit of the Spirit, we got to begin with where we are. So, first of all, we have self-control manifested. The second thing I want us to look at is self-control managed. In other words, when we come to find out, well, there's this area that's really kind of lacking. I'm lacking in self-control in particular areas. How are we going to respond? Because that has implications for anything anything else that I said. In fact, it has implications for what I have already said. Some of you have looked up there and you've seen the list, and you've got that list written down, and you have already come to a specific response to what it means when I have exhibited a lack of self-control. How are we going to manage that? What response are we going to give? It's very important if we are going to grow in this area, it really matters a great deal what our response is. So there are a few responses that I simply want to bring forward. And there's going to be some good responses and some not so good responses. And so I hope that those things will be obvious. Here are just a few ways that we tend to respond. First of all, is one of the ways that we do is we tend to ignore it. If we, I know that you brought out, and maybe sometimes I use language that I shouldn't use, but, whatever. And we're just going to do our own thing. We have a tendency to ignore it. Well, we're not the only ones who do that. That happens quite often. You can go through and read Acts chapter 24. Paul is standing before the secular leader, Felix. And he points out, the Bible says that Paul is really letting him have it. And Felix could have had his head at any point in time. Paul was a fearless speaker. He stood in front of Felix, and the Bible says that he talked to him about righteousness, about self-control, and about judgment. And he didn't hold back on anything to the point where Felix became nervous. The Bible says that he became frightened, in fact. But all he did was he sent Paul away. He said, Paul, when I want to hear more about this, I'll call you back. And guess what? You don't ever see any kind of change. He's confronted with his own lack of self-control, and he simply ignores it. And there's a lot of people, maybe even here, maybe online. There are going to be people who are going to hear this. The Spirit of God is going to convict them in some specific area of their life, and they're just going to try to push that down inside because they don't want to go through the work or the change that is necessary to exhibit greater amount of self-control. So some people are simply going to ignore it. Number two, second way that people are going to respond is through blame. Blame. Now, I know that would probably never happen in here, but there are other people who are out there who will have a tendency to blame. Now, a perfect example in the Bible is the very first time that a lack of self-control is talked about and is manifested for us. It goes all the way back to Genesis chapter 3. You've got the story of Adam and Eve, Genesis chapter 2, chapter 3. You got the story of Adam and Eve, and you got the fruit. Don't eat the fruit. They look at the fruit. They like the fruit. They eat the fruit. And guess what? Guess what Adam does? God comes and says, well, Adam, what's the deal, man? What's the deal? Adam says, hey, this woman over here, she's the one that gave me the food. And by the way, remember this little dig that Adam throws in there. The woman that you gave me. So God, this kind of rests on you, right? So we're just going to kind of throw blame wherever we want to. Well, it's not really my fault. Oh yeah, I know I lost my temper with my kids, but you don't know my kids. I'm going to get on a series of parenting sometime later on. But anyway, maybe you need to do something about your kids and you won't be in this predicament. But, we want to try to throw blame on someone else for our lack of self-control. So, some people ignore it. Some people blame. Some people excuse it. It is excused. And here's the phrase, I couldn't help it. You ever said that about anything? I couldn't help it. Let me just tell you, that's a lie. That's a lie from the pits of hell. Yes, you could. I couldn't help it. In fact, if there's any perfect definition of a lack of self-control or no self-control, it's that I couldn't help it. That's exactly how you would define the opposite of self-control, not helping it. But the fact is the Bible still says, exhibit self-control. You think, well, I don't want to have control. I want to give God control. And that sounds spiritual. And I understand what most people say when they say that most of the time. But understand what the Bible has said, what God Himself has said. He has called it self-control. So we can't excuse that and put it on someone else saying that, well, I was controlled by my impulses. No, self-control is you control your impulses not the other way around. And some people they just want to give their excuses and try to pass it off on someone else, and it simply doesn't work with God. It might work with me. It might make you look better to your spouse or to your boss or whoever it might be. It simply doesn't work with God. Number 4 is to reject. It is rejection. I am going to reject what you were saying and move on. The rich young ruler is the perfect example of that. Comes to Jesus and says, "What must I do?" And he says, "Well, you follow all these rules." He said, "Well, I've done all that stuff, and it still doesn't seem to be working. There's still something empty inside." So Jesus attacked the very one thing that has control of him, has control of the rich young ruler. He says, "Take all your stuff, get rid of it, give it to someone else, and come follow me." And at that point, he's like, "This stuff controls me way too much. So I will say no thanks to what you're offering, and I will continue down the path that I've been going on." And there's a lot of people who choose to do that. A lot of people who choose to do that. There are people that I know, is nobody in here, is nobody even in this town, okay? There's nobody even in this city, so please don't get offended by this. But I know there are a couple of people that I know that they are overweight, and you give them the answer. You tell them, "Hey, you just need to drop this, this, and this out of your diet, and you will automatically be in better shape." But they will say, "You know what? I hear what you're saying, but those impulses to have those foods and those drinks, that is what I'm going to continue to do. No, thank you. These impulses have control over me. I don't have control over these impulses." And some people simply choose to reject what you tell them. And then finally, and this is where I hope that we would be, because this is important to God, and that is to yield. That is to yield. In other words, to confess, "Yes, I have struggled in this area. Yes, I have failed in this area. God, I confess that to you. I know that it's a problem. God, I know that I need your strength. God, I know that I need your help. God, please forgive me and give me strength in this area of focus." Self-control. So, now, I want us to take a look at, and by the way, all that wasn't just introduction, but it is going to lead us to 1 Corinthians chapter 9. I hope you are still open there, 1 Corinthians chapter 9. And Paul, when he's talking to the church in Corinth, he's going to give them reasons to be self-motivated in the area of self-control. This is why someone should be self-controlled. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, he's going to close out this chapter, at least our chapter. He's going to close this out in verse 24 with this idea. Let's read this together. He says, "Do you not know that those who run a race all run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win. Everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control in all things. They then do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. Therefore I run in such a way as not without aim. I box in such a way as not beating the air. But I discipline my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified." Now, let me just give you a quick background, quick 4 points, and we'll be finished. Hang with me. He's going to use athletic competition as a background, as an illustration to help understand self-control. And it's a great illustration because it was a great illustration in his day. It's a great illustration today. The illustration, the immediate context for him was that in Greece there were 2 primary athletic events that were taking place in the world, but especially in the Greek world. One was what we know of best today. It was the Olympic Games. Those Olympic Games began in Greece. They picked up again about 120 years ago. And so we know the Olympics, and we know all that goes into that. Man, we see nowadays, we see exposés on sports channels, and when the Olympics come on, we see all the background stories of these kids. They're starting when they're age 2, and they don't eat all the same foods that everybody else does. They don't hang out with all their friends. They don't go to the same schools. They have to study an extra. I mean, just all the stuff that they have to give up to do what they do to be these Olympic athletes. The Olympics was one of those sets of games. A second set of games was just like them. It was called the Isthmian Games. The Isthmian Games. Now, the Isthmian Games were hosted, you know how the Olympics, they go from like one city to a different city all over the world nowadays. The Isthmian Games, every single time that they were put on, were hosted by the city of Corinth. And so when he's talking to the church in Corinth, in their own backyard, they have seen these athletes train year after year after year. And he says, you see how hard these guys train. You see all that these guys give up to do what they're doing, to be successful in what they're doing. That's the kind of self-control that you need to have in your Christian walk. And he's telling you and me, what you see, and we tend to gloss over this, and we think that this is for someone else, but what we hear, because it comes to us in the Word of God today, is what you see these Olympic athletes sacrificing so that they can be good Olympic athletes. That's the kind of lifestyle that we should exhibit in our own lives so that we can appropriately follow Christ. So what is it that's going to motivate us to be self-controlled? Let me give you 4 things very quickly. First of all, is we look at our rival. Our rival, the competition. Don't you know that those who run in a race all run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win. There is a competition that's taking place. I mean, you are in competition. Now, listen, competition has a lot to do with self-control. My daughter was in a softball tournament yesterday. And she pitched the first game, and then there was a different pitcher in each game. And it's interesting because, all pitchers, unless you're just lights out and the competition maybe is a little bit less, but when the competition is pretty even, you're going to go through some, as the pitcher, you're going to go through some highs and you're going to go through some lows. At one point in the game, my daughter, she struck out 5 in 3 innings. And one of those innings, she struck out the side, meaning she faced 3 batters. She struck out all 3 batters. But there was another inning where, she had a walk. There were a couple of hits, there were a couple of errors, there were a couple of runs that were scored by the other team. And when you come into a time like that, here's what the coach says. The coach says, okay, all right, Natalie, step back and take a breath. Step back and take a breath. Now what he's really telling her is, step back. I know that things have gotten chaotic. I know that you walked that batter. You didn't strike out all 3 this time. You walked the batter. I know that a couple of girls got a couple of good hits on you. I know that the defense behind you didn't do all that great. I know that there's chaos all around you. But you are going to have to collect yourself. You're going to have to get yourself together because there is another batter that is waiting on you. And if you don't get yourself together, this inning is only going to get worse. And so sometimes the rival, the competition, requires you to step back and gather yourself together, control yourself, or things are only going to get worse. Now, somebody might ask this question. It's a great question. Well, who are we in competition against? If it's about life and we're talking about self-control, who is our rival? You know who our rival is? Me. It's me against me. And I want to win. I don't want it to get worse. I don't want things to get worse. So I got to step back. I got to take a breath. I got to collect myself. I got to exhibit self-control. And then I move on. The second motivating factor for self-control is the reward. Notice he says in verse 25, he says, those who exhibit self-control, they do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable wreath. Now back then, nowadays the Olympic stars, they get the medals. They get the gold, medal, bronze, and all that kind of stuff. Back then, you know what kind of medal they got? You know what kind of reward they got? They got a pine wreath. Okay, doesn't sound too great, does it? It just sounds kind of itchy. You put that thing around you, and you're like, that. And not only that, it's going to be dead not too long. Might be all green and pretty 1 minute, but it ain't lasting long. It's going to be brown before long. That's what he says. It's a perishable wreath. It's going to be falling apart before too long. They give up their whole life for this wreath that will be dead in a week. Are you serious? He says you've got so much more that you're working toward. There's so much more that matters in what you're doing. It is an imperishable wreath. It will last for all eternity. So he says that the reward, first of all, is long-term. It is an eternal wreath. And some people like to say, well, it's not about rewards. It's just about serving. It's about doing the right thing. Oh, really? Oh, really? Then why did Jesus make such a big deal about rewards? Do you know that it's okay? It is okay for you to say, I'm doing this because I'm laying up treasures in heaven. And buddy, when I get up there, the rewards are going to be great. Do you know that does not offend your Father? It only pleases your Father. Can you imagine taking something to your kids? You sacrifice something for your kids. You want to give something to your kids, and you bring it to them, and you're like, no, thank you, Daddy. Oh, you're taking this kid because I done sacrificed for this. This is yours. Take it. No, listen. You want to please Father. You want to please the Father. You work for Him, and you work for the rewards that only He can give. It is a-okay. That's why He talks about it so much. Because the rewards aren't just the rewards that are to come. Let me just tell you right now, real quick, the self-control rewards are for here on this planet. That you also get the rewards in this life. The fulfillment. The absence, check this out now, you ever thought about this? The absence of guilt. The problem with the absence of guilt is we don't really feel it until we've got it, and then it's too late. But the absence of guilt, the fulfillment, the satisfaction, the joy, all of those things are rewards in this life. Moving on for the sake of time. Number 3. The reason for self-control is, well, the word reason. The purpose. He says in verse 26, I run in such a way as not without aim. I box in such a way as not beating the air. I'm not just going through the motions. There is a purpose in all of this. I'm not self-controlled for the sake of self-control. I'm self-controlled because there is something more beyond that. It is God. It is God's glory. It is joy in this life. It is these other things. There is a purpose behind it. It matters. Number 4 and final. The motivation for self-control is reaching. Paul says, after I do all this stuff, I don't want to preach to others and then be disqualified. There is an element that says how I live, even in the area of self-control, is going to have an effect on the people who are around me. And if I have a lack of self-control, the things that I have done in this life will be negated in the lives of these other people. My trying to reach them, my trying to win them will all be canceled out because I exhibited a lack of self-control. If you want to reach people, if you want your life to affect others, if you want to have an influence, a godly influence on the world that's around you, you must exhibit self-control. And Paul says, if that matters to you, you practice self-control. You see, we began by talking about Jesus and His self-control. And so He looks at us and He says, if you want to be followers of mine, you emulate me. And we must have self-control. How have you done in the area of your self-control? In our time of invitation, of course, we're going to have to sing, we're going to do all that we normally do. I don't know, it would be great, okay? It would be awesome if I was standing up here and I was saying, okay, for all of you who want to get right with God in this area, come down, let's pray the altar. Anybody want to do that? We all got to sound like we're perfect, right? We all got to sound like, oh, I got my self-control all together, Listen, I know that was a thing, okay? I know you ain't coming, and I know that you ain't got it all together, okay? Not everybody in here got it all together. During our time of invitation, I'm just going to invite you right where you are. Let them play, let everybody else sing. You just bow your head and close your eyes and say, God, in this particular area, I realize you have shown me today I have blown it. I have exhibited a lack of self-control, and I don't want that. There are reasons for me to have self-control, and I want those to motivate me to be more like you. Now, there may be others. There may be somebody in your life that you really, they just got a temper. There are just certain things that they're doing with their body or with their lives that are really just spiraling them out of control, and you really have a burden for them. Maybe you wouldn't want to come up here and pray for them. There's no shame in that for you. It just shows that you got control. You got a great burden, a great heart for them. The altar will be open if you'd like to come and pray for them. Maybe God has spoken to you about joining our church. Maybe God has spoken to you about your own salvation, about following Him. I'll be standing down front if there's something that I can help you with as you respond to him. That's what I'm here for. That's what I want to do. So you take advantage of that. We're not going to linger long unless people come. If people come, we'll extend it. If not, we won't. You simply do as God will lead you to do. Lord, we thank you for your example. God, we know that we struggle oftentimes in the area of self-control because our emotions get the best of us, our circumstances get the best of us, our frustrations, even the shock of life sometimes gets the best of us. And so, Lord, we come to you confessing, and we thank you for the forgiveness that you offer to us. Now, Lord, we need strength to persevere as we move forward. We ask that you build up within us that fruit of the Spirit that helps us to control self. We need your Spirit to help accomplish that. And so, Lord, may it be, and may we be changed individuals. Lord, I pray for that person in here that needs to know you. They need to come to know you and experience a relationship with you for the very first time. May they surrender to you. And God, we also have people in our hearts and our minds that we know that they just, it seems like one bad decision after another because they simply can't control themselves. And it might be something that seems to be nothing, like the food that we eat. Or it might be something that we consider something very, very big, and that it might be a life-controlling issue. God, in all things, it turns out to be a big thing. And so we want to surrender these things to you, and we want to pray for those who struggle with surrendering these things to you. So God, our time in the next few moments as we respond, may our response be one that is healthy, and may it be honoring to you. In Jesus' name, amen. You stand to your feet and do as God leads.
Somebody cuts you off and you raise your fist and you're honking at them and you're screaming, you got road rage, don't get one of these and put it on your car, okay? Don't do that. You are exempt. But if you're excited about what's going on at Macedonia Baptist Church and you can exhibit exhibit just a little bit of self-control when you're on the road, this here is for you. So what I'm going to do is they're just in a pack like this. I'll help you put it on. I'll help you put it on today if you want me to. But they're just a little sleeve like this. I'm going to put this back here in the back at the welcome table. I'm going to put let's see, an offering plate. I'll put an offering plate back there. You put $3 off on the plate, you take it. It's on the honor system. You know, we're not lording over this, okay? So please take advantage of that. Also, on this side right here, if you notice in your bullets, those notes that you take on, they have hole punch. That's because we provide these here for you. If you would like to use these, again, these are $5 or $6, whatever. If you want to give some money for that, you can put that off on plate too. They're up here. You can take one, and but some of those, when we first started doing those, they had the old logo in the front of them. I've got some sleeves some new sleeves that have the new logo on it for the front of those. If you'd like those, I'll just set it right up here. You just come and take it. And yes, those are free of charge. And then the last thing that I want to bring to your attention, I know we mentioned it in the announcements, but this is just a big deal, and we haven't done it before. This Thursday is the National Day of Prayer. Now listen, we talk about this stuff all the time, and we do very little about it. I think you would have to be naive. That's a nice word. You would have to be naive to think that Washington is not a mess. You would have to be naive to think that America morally is not in a free-for-all and in a big fat mess. And we talk about that stuff and we whine about it, and then we never do anything about it. Let me tell you, there are two things that you can do about it. Two primary things. And one of those two things is not vote. Okay, now I believe in voting, and when it comes time to vote, I'm going to talk to you about voting. But voting is not the answer. There are two things that are the answer. Number one is prayer. Number two is evangelism. The issue is a heart issue. That's where we are. And so we need to start with prayer. So that's why we have the National Day of Prayers. This Thursday, pray all day, pray wherever you are. We're just giving you two specific things that you can do to help out with that. Number one, right over here, right in front of the gym area, we're going to have a service at 7:15 Thursday morning. It's just for it's not just. The reason we did it then is for those people who need to go to work. We're going to go from 7:15 to 8 o'clock. I will be looking at my phone. At 7:15, we start. We will be out by 8 o'clock, if not earlier, in case you need to get to work, or if you want to come for part of it, got to leave early. Okay. We're going to be meeting right outside, pray for 45 minutes, okay? We're going to have a little bit of music, short devotion, and then a lot of prayer. That's what we're going to do. And immediately following that, beginning at 8 o'clock, from 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock, this building will be open. It will be unlocked. And we're going to invite you or anybody else, the entire community, to come and pray. This isn't just for Emmanuel Baptist Church. Anybody who wants to come in here and pray will be open to pray. You can come in, kneel there at the altar, you can sit in the pew, you can stand, you can walk, do whatever you want to do. But you can come and you can pray. We're going to have security here. Security will be available. We'll be here. But we'll also have a prayer partner that will be available all day long. If you would like for somebody to pray with you, that's what they're here for. Okay? Now, if you just want to pray by yourself, that's fine too. But somebody will be available if you would like to take advantage of it. All right? 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock this coming Thursday. So, those things are going on. That's